The Republican-controlled House passed a continuing resolution to keep the government open past Friday. But now Democrats say they will try to kill that bill in the Senate. I'm not so sure they will. That continuing resolution barely passed the House earlier in the week. And one of Speaker Mike Johnson's tricks is sending the House home after passing the continuing resolution. He's done this before. He leaves our Senate with no choice but to pass the resolution he just passed. They can't make any changes because if the Senate has a different version, there'll be nobody in the House of Representatives to negotiate with. They all went home. Democrats have been successfully painted in a corner. So it's basically take it or leave it. Pass the House resolution as is in the Senate, or the government shuts down early Saturday morning. Are we looking at a shutdown? Who knows? I doubt it. This is not a budget bill. It's a continuing resolution, which means it can be filibustered. So the Democrats in the Senate do have options. The Democrats do have the power to kill this continuing resolution in the Senate, but that means a government shutdown. Now, there are budget bills and there are continuing resolutions. Continuing resolutions are what you need to keep the government open when you can't pass a budget bill. That's what we're looking at right now, is a continuing resolution. In the Senate, a budget bill is a simple thumbs up or thumbs down because budget bills usually pass with a simple majority. They're usually passed through a process called reconciliation. There are two budget bills. There's the House version and the Senate version. The two versions go into a conference committee made up of the House and the Senate, and they reconcile the two versions of the two separate budget bills. They come out with one bill that the House and the Senate then have to vote on. That is reconciliation. That's for budget bills. They can't be filibustered, okay? It's been put through the House, put through the Senate, then it's put through the conference committees, and when it goes back to the Senate through reconciliation, all you need is a simple majority. That's reconciliation. This is a continuing resolution, not a budget bill. It's a stopgap measure to pay the government's bills until a budget is finally passed. No reconciliation here, because the continuing resolution currently before the Senate that we are going to watch either die or get passed this week, this continuing resolution before the Senate passed in the House of Representatives, but it didn't go into a conference committee. This continuing resolution can be filibustered in the Senate because this continuing resolution, it's the first time the Senate is saying it. So, Senate Minority Leader, Democrat Chuck Schumer says, I'm going to make sure the votes are not there for the House's continuing resolution. He's kind of threatening a government shutdown. He's threatening a government shutdown. I doubt he's going to follow through. Now, the House passed their continuing resolution on Tuesday, sent home. The deadline is Friday at midnight or the government shuts down. The Senate votes for the House's version of a continuing resolution. That's the only option on the table, or the government shuts down. What's in the House version of this continuing resolution? Well, it keeps the government open until the very end of 2025's fiscal year, which would be October 1st. According to the House's continuing resolution, there would be no official budget ever for 2025. The government would have been paid for in 2025 through a series of continuing resolutions. Meanwhile, Democrats are pushing what they call a clean resolution that would keep the government open until April 11th and buy just enough time for Congress to pass a 2025 budget. That's never going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Democrats claim they want what is called a clean continuing resolution. It's called clean because it would keep spending levels exactly at 2024 spending levels. Democrats are saying the resolution that passed in the House earlier in the week is dirty because it calls for about a $7 to $8 billion spending cut. Not only that, but they also complain, the Democrats complain, the spending cuts reallocate money giving the Pentagon a $6 billion raise while slashing roughly $13 billion from programs like community health centers and the Army Corps of Engineers. So get your pad and pencil out. The federal government's budget for 2025 through a series of continuing resolutions is basically going to stay at 2024 levels. And let's just round everything off and say it's $7 trillion. House Republicans passed that continuing resolution. It cuts about $8 billion from a $7 trillion budget. I'm asking you, leave a comment. Is that worth shutting the government down? Over $8 billion. I say that because these are Republicans, and once Democrats shut the government down, I'm not so sure we can get it back open. There are legitimate complaints about the continuing resolution that passed in the House. It redirects money away from community health centers towards ICE, which Democrats say will lead to even more unnecessary roundups of undocumented immigrants. Democrats also complain that the continuing resolution provides the Trump White House with way too much latitude on how money can and can't be spent, leaving little room for congressional oversight. But I just don't see Democrats shutting the government down over this. The House's continuing resolution calls for cutting $1 billion in funding from Washington, D.C., a city that has no congressional representation. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser saying a $1 billion shortfall for fiscal year 2025 means major last-minute cuts in education, police, emergency response time, and other critical essential services. This is bad. It's racist. It's really bad. To placate Republicans, the mayor of D.C. already said her city would remove its mural honoring the Black Lives Matter protest movement, as if this is the most important thing on the agenda. Well, for Republicans, it is. That mural went up in June of 2020 in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder. The D.C. City Council voted back then to call the immediate area surrounding the mural, they called it Black Lives Matter Plaza, and this drives Republicans crazier than they already are. More than 43% of Washington, D.C. is black. Washington is a persecuted city. Republicans are going out of their way to punish it. A $7 trillion budget for 2025, and they pull $1 billion from the one city they're responsible for, Washington, D.C. Why? Because 43% of Washington, D.C. is black. That's the only reason they want to slash funding, because D.C. has a large black population with zero representation in Congress. It's not a state. It's not part of a state. It's why Republicans will never allow D.C. to become our 51st state, because there are too many black people there. Canada is 70% white, so Trump can't wait to make it our 51st state. Not Washington, D.C. The people who live in D.C. are colonized. They don't have a member of Congress. They don't have two senators. They pay taxes. They are United States citizens, but they have no representation in Washington, D.C. And they depend on the federal government for help in managing and funding their city. Like I said, it's a colony, and it makes Republicans feel good to punish black citizens. The D.C. mayor announced the Black Lives Matter mural will come down right after, she announced this, it would come down right after Georgia House Republican Andrew Clyde introduced a bill cutting millions from D.C.'s budget unless that mural was removed. With all that's going on in the world, Andrew Clyde is insisting no funding for D.C. unless they get rid of the Black Lives Matter mural. Why would Andrew Clyde, a Republican congressman from Georgia, care about a Black Lives Matter mural in D.C.? Well, he's from Georgia. He doesn't have that much more to worry about. If you're a white Republican from Georgia, that's what you were sent to Washington for, to persecute black people. By the way, Clyde owns Clyde Armory in Georgia. It's a 12,500 square foot warehouse that sells guns and ammunitions and all those wonderful things. So what else does he have to do other than make life miserable for black people living in Washington, D.C.? He's one of the worst. Andrew Clyde, one of the worst. So, will the government shut down? In the past, Democrats have always been the responsible party, working to avoid government shutdowns because it's not good for federal employees. Elon Musk saying, I welcome a government shutdown, begging the question, if Chuck Schumer and the Democrats filibuster this continuing resolution to death, are they playing right into Musk's rapacious hands? Republicans get the shutdown they want. They want a shutdown. That's why they were sent to Washington, to shut down, to destroy our government. Not only that, but they get to shut down the government and blame it on the Democrats. It's a win-win. They can blame Democrats for not passing what Republicans are calling a perfectly reasonable continuing resolution. And punishing Washington, D.C., notwithstanding, in the scheme of things, this may not be the hill for Democrats to die on, because once the government shuts down with Trump and Republicans in charge of both houses, who's to say they will have the appetite to open our government back up? A government shutdown might create just enough chaos for Trump to declare emergency powers, which he's been salivating over, and do Lord knows what with them. Angus King, he's the independent from Maine who caucuses with Senate Democrats, he says a shutdown is precisely what Donald Trump wants because it gives Trump and Musk more power to decide which workers to send home and which workers are essential and must stay on the job. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise is warning publicly, if the continuing resolution that they pass in the House dies in the Senate, then it will be Chuck Schumer's shutdown. What do you think? Leave a comment. Given how dangerous a moment this is in American history, how wise is it for Chuck Schumer and the Democrats to shut the government down? Now, there's a lot of pressure on Democrats to do something, to stand up to Trump. I get that. But is allowing the government to shut down doing something? Is it really standing up to Donald Trump? This is Trump's first 100 days. I'm going to say something a lot of my listeners don't want to hear. If you're playing the long game, then you give him a little of what he wants so he can own the economy, so he has no excuses. For better or worse, I know we don't want to admit this, but Republicans kept the House and they took the Senate and they took the White House. Something some say literally took, but that's for another show. Voters need to see for at least the first 100 days who these people are. They need to be reminded who Trump and the Republicans are. And I worry shutting down the government over $8 billion, community health centers and Washington, D.C. notwithstanding, I worry shutting down the government over $8 billion may cloud the issue. This is the most dangerous Republican Party in American history, and you don't give them an inch. I get that. But what if the inch you're giving them is enough rope to hang themselves? I don't know. But my gut tells me a government shutdown would be a disaster for Democrats. I could be wrong, but as I keep saying, who's to say the government will open back up? Personally, I don't think Schumer will allow the government to shut down. I think we'll see the usual brinksmanship, but I just can't imagine Chuck Schumer serving up a government shutdown on a silver plate for Trump to blame Democrats with. Let's look at the math on all of this. You decide. Let me know what you think. The Democrats can kill the continuing resolution unless Republicans find 7 or 8 Democratic senators willing to vote for it. That's the math here. Republicans need to flip 7 or 8 Democrats, depending on Rand Paul, in the Senate to pass the continuing resolution, and a government shutdown will be averted Friday at midnight. So far, no surprise here, Pennsylvania Democrat John Fetterman says he will vote for it, and I believe him. Democratic Senator John Ossoff of Georgia is up for re-election in 2026. He's signaling a willingness to vote for the continuing resolution, but hasn't committed. Angus King, who I just talked about, he's an independent from Maine who caucuses with Democrats. He was just reelected, so he can afford not to vote for the continuing resolution, but he says he may vote for it. Arizona Democratic Senators Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallego both say they may vote for the continuing resolution. Arizona, as you know, is a swing state. Trump carried it in 2024. Biden carried it in 2020. They have 2 Democratic senators. Mark Kelly, Democratic senator from Arizona, doesn't have to run for re-election until 2028. And Ruben Gallego was just elected. So the 2 of them can vote against the Republican Party's continuing resolution and not pay too big a political price for a government shutdown. They have a couple of years for their voters to forget that. Tim Kaine of Virginia, Hillary's running mate, he was just reelected. He says he might vote for the continuing resolution. Colorado Democratic Senator John Hickenlooper also signaling he would vote for the continuing resolution. Hickenlooper up for re-election in the 2026 midterms, doesn't want a government shutdown on his hands. And then there's Senator Alex Padilla of California, who says he can be enticed into voting for a continuing resolution. Padilla doesn't have to worry about re-election until 2028. Plus, he's from California. It's a safe blue seat. That's the math here. Again, you need 7 or 8 Democrats to vote with Republicans to break the filibuster and then keep the government open. So we're looking at possibly 7, 8 Democratic senators who might vote for the continuing resolution. Right now, except for John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, the other 7 say they're on the fence. And if you can get 7 or 8, the continuing resolution is passed. Again, Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul says he will not vote for the continuing resolution, but he's up for re-election in 2028. So he doesn't have to worry about Trump primarying him. So everything seems like a crisis. It's one crisis after another. Is this a crisis? I don't think so. Chuck Schumer claims he's confident that Democrats will hold the line and not vote for the continuing resolution. But I think we can all agree this will be his shutdown. And the question, as I said earlier, is once the government is shut down, how do you know you can reopen it with Trump and Musk calling the shots? I just don't see how Schumer allows this continuing resolution to die. I just don't. Look, I don't know, but it feels like a shutdown is something Donald Trump would love. More chaos. Chaos he can blame on Democrats, and as I said earlier, a reason to invoke emergency powers. Not sure this is the hill Democrats should be dying on. There are more important battles, like making sure Trump's 2017 tax cuts for the rich expire on December 31st of this year. They're due to expire on December 31st of this year. That's the hill to die on. And right now, they're not talking about renewing the tax cuts for the richest 1%. That is worth shutting the government down over. Democrats are getting a lot of pressure, though. You got to do something. But doing something isn't always the answer. Doing something often makes things a lot worse, like invading Iraq and Afghanistan. Hey, we did something. Tariffs, 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. Trump is doing something. Not always good to do something. What is Schumer? What is his play? How does he get out of this and save political face? Punchbowl, Politico, a couple of people I'm talking to, reporting, telling me that Chuck Schumer might be able to save face by voting to end the filibuster on the continuing resolution. That's cloture. So we'll see a vote to advance the bill. I know it's confusing. It's confusing. It's designed to be confusing so senators can say, I voted for the bill, but then I voted against it. It allows them to hedge their political bets. And I think, from what I'm being told and from what I'm reading, this is probably how Schumer is going to maneuver things. He's going to create political cover so Democrats can go home and tell their constituents they voted against the continuing resolution. But in order to do that, they first have to vote for cloture, vote to end the filibuster, to advance the bill. Now remember, in the Senate, you need 60 votes to kill the filibuster. Democrats can filibuster this continuing resolution to death, but if the continuing resolution is voted on with no filibuster, and that's how it would get voted on. If there's a filibuster, it never gets voted on. So if the Democrats don't filibuster and they advance the bill, every Democrat gets to vote against the continuing resolution. Every Democrat can vote against the continuing resolution. It'll pass. There's no government shutdown, and Democrats can claim they voted against it, which is true. They just didn't kill it through a filibuster. That's how I'm being told things will play out by the end of the week. Democrats will kick, they will scream, they will end up with what is called cloture. And then it's a simple majority. After cloture, it's a simple majority needed to pass the continuing resolution. And politically, a continuing resolution right now would keep spending levels at around 2024 levels all the way through 2025 with $8 billion in cuts. And that is something Democrats can use against Republicans. It works out okay as long as you don't live in Washington, D.C., or rely on the community health centers that are going to have to take some hits. Again, I know that following this stuff can be boring and complicated, but this is real. This is not invading Greenland, Panama, or Canada. We're not going to do that. Trump is going to reverse the tariffs. This is real. This is Congress. This affects your life. So Democrats can save face by voting for cloture, ending debate, ending the filibuster. That's according to parliamentary rules. And then the continuing resolution is a simple thumbs up or thumbs down, a simple majority. And it allows Democrats to vote against it, to save political face, and still not have a government shutdown on their hands because there are more Republicans in the Senate than Democrats. It's a simple majority. I hope I am able to explain this. I hope that's clear. I know these are arcane rules designed to allow each side to save face and claim I voted for or against the bill before I voted against or for it. In the end, my guess is Democrats will vote not to filibuster this continuing resolution, but they will then vote against the bill, which will pass because without the filibuster, it only requires a simple majority. I hope I made that clear. I think I did. I hope it's important.